Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 400. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the internationally recognized and lauded expert in creativity and advertising, the Chief Growth Officer of DAIVID.co, Barney Worfolk-Smith.
But Barney Smith for the purposes of this.
Yeah, see? There you go. That's right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Barney, it's great to talk to you. I know that we were just talking earlier, about some background, your background and stuff with DAIVID.co. And that is your logo behind you as well. And for our listeners out there, it is a pink flamingo, right?
Sure is. So yeah, that's Dave behind us, as we've shortened it to. Oh, by the way, creativity, genius, storyteller.
See?
Yeah, that's a very big intro. You've hyped me quite up there. I'll do what I can. It's a Sunday afternoon, so I'm going to have to crank up my energy levels to meet that. But yeah, so here's Dave. And creativity within the way that we present ourselves to the world was something that we always wanted to be the case. And before I came on and joined my business partner, Ian, he had briefed a creative designer who we used to work with. A load of us used to work together at a separate company back in the day, and I'll tell you about that in a minute because that's cool as well. And there was lots of toing and froing about what it should be, and there was like David, so there was this David and Goliath idea. So I've got some lovely pictures of like little. The guy he creates some graphics for computer games, like really cute things. So there's like little guy fighting, monsters and like David versus Goliath. None of it looked right. And then at the last minute, he just drew a flamingo. And it was so kind of not relevant that we were like, yeah, love that. And the purpose of our business is to help businesses stand out. Right. So it just felt like an appropriate thing to us have an easily distinguishable, immediately recognizable thing. Plus, there's loads of cool stuff that you can do. For example, there's a little flamingo emoji. So whenever I'm sending an email subject line or putting a date in someone's diary, I put the emoji in so it stands out. So there's like someone will look at their diary for the week and there's a little pink flamingo. It's kind of cute, and it does, aside from all the joking, it says it does what we do, so it's fun. Right. DAIVID is digital AI video, which is where it started for us, but we look at all sorts of different types of creative now, so that's where the name came from.
Well, that's amazing. So it actually stands for something too, because you have in there in your logo the AI sticks out because it's in a different color. So people are like AI. At this time last year, people were hearing about it, but it's just become so integrated now into day-to-day stuff. Where do you see, I know this is a loaded question, Barney, but where's the direction? Where do you see the direction in, usually people ask a question in the next 5 years. Things are going fast. Where do you see what's happening with AI in your line of work in the next 6 months to a year?
6 months to a year. So I just want to take a little step back just to be clear on what we do. Because that kind of colours my answer. So in a nutshell, DAIVID, we're creative effectiveness experts. So we've spent many years understanding what makes creative work through research and study. And we've trained an AI that you can now show an advert to, and it will say, oh, I've seen that before, so I predict people will behave in this way. So that's what we do. And that training is done through human input. So none of those nasty hallucinations or, things where there's gender bias or any of that sort of nonsense, because it's trained by human data set. So that's my little, I have to say that before the start of anything. So what do I think about AI? Massive question. And several things. There's a lot of the application of AI to whatever it might be, to artificial general intelligence or solving challenges. I'm going to talk about this just from the point of generative AI making advertising, which is my wheelhouse. That's the area that I live in. And several things. Yes, the hype has been massive. and I don't know if you know the Gartner hype cycle. You always have the top of the hype curve, and then you fall into the trough of disillusionment. But that's where the good stuff happens, in the trough of disillusionment, because all of the people who are just banging drums and shouting from the rooftops go away, and then people like put their working boots on and they actually start doing stuff with it. So we're in that bit at the moment now, us actually being one of those applications, and it's where people are applying that. So generative AI. I used to run, before this, a social creative agency. So we made loads of creative for social. So much as I am a creative soul and I don't like it, I'm used to spreadsheets with a cost per unit.
Right.
This is how much an image costs. This is how much a 6-second video costs. So I know that. And I did some, back of a napkin maths about 18 months ago, I think, because I was curious. And I reckon that cost savings for like social media creative you could probably cut about 90% of your costs, I think, something along those lines. So the world being the world, that's going to happen, right? It's inexorable, because money drives it all. So I think one of the things I'm a bit surprised about is that it hasn't actually happened quicker. And have you played around with generative AI and like any of the? Yeah, cool. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you know them, right? That when you go in there and there's a big difference between what you're in your head and then coaxing it out through prompts, and it's and so that's the thing which is causing the trough of disillusionment, because there's still a lot of, it's quite difficult to coax out what you need. And as that improves, which it inexorably is, and as video comes on board, things like Sora and the ability for that to be to produce longer videos, then it will inexorably be adopted for a massive strata of advertising content, from basic stuff like click here to buy this tooth whitening, up to a certain level of social media output. I don't think it's going to be making big TV ads probably ever. It might do, but there's an element of creativity and understanding of the brand and needing to do something different, which will inevitably have that craft. So there's a lot here, but I'll finish talking in a minute. So personally, I used to employ lots of young creative people, and I know how much they get paid, and like they're often wanting to make music or paint or just make art or do whatever they do, and they do that through advertising creative, and they get paid an amount of money, and it enables them to have that life. And I am upset that a whole bunch of those people are going to have their ability to do that taken away from them for a period of time, and it's going to coerce those youngsters into having to grasp the nettle and learn how to use AI. You can't stick your head in the sand. It's just not an option. The toothpaste is out of the tube. You need to get on with it, which is harsh considering this younger generation has so many challenges anyway. On a more positive note for our business, it doesn't actually make any difference. We can look at AI generated content in exactly the same way as we look at political advertising or normal advertising, be it on TikTok or TV. It makes no difference to us whatsoever. So theoretically, I think it's about a year to a year's time. You asked me 6 months. I think that's a bit soon still. It's latter end of next year. I think we're going to really start to see it being deployed at scale globally. You'll notice it. And yeah, when that happens, the internet is just going to be flooded with this stuff. And hopefully we'll be in a position to be able to understand what's working and what's not, and hopefully make it a bit less annoying and weird. That's as far as ahead as I can see.
Because there's one good quote. Somebody said that like AI is not going to replace your job. Your job's going to be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI.
100%. Yeah. That's the, I'm a relatively old dog, and I've forced myself to get in there and understand the way that it works. And so, we can all do that. And I think it's existential for many in the creative sector to do that. Otherwise, someone else will. And you know what? They probably won't care about creativity, so it'll be rubbish. So,
Right.
yeah. If you want to make sure that good stuff continues to happen, be at the wheel.
Where do you see the evolution on being in such a digital medium, and um, how would a company like David uh, see the evolution of advertising in the next few years?
Oof, Barney, you're asking me these massive questions. Um, where do I see it going? It's a difficult question. So let me break it down a little bit.
Okay.
Um, if I look at this from a business point of view
Right.
first, the advertising industry globally is in a bit of a mess. Um,
Mm.
it's been the big holding companies, they've existentially since the 80s they split between media and creative, and the media guys, it's been their job to drive efficiency, and they've been busy doing that for 40 years, and as a result there's not anything left. and and the consultancies have kind of moved in and bought the more interesting side of the top end of the agency ecosystem. So they've taken that money, and the creative agencies are subject to, they need to make more stuff. There's a bloke called Michael Farmer, who wrote Madison Avenue Manslaughter, who I saw speak only 2 weeks ago, and just he was talking about a study he did in 2000 and, let me get this right, I think it was 2009, where the average full-time employee in a creative agency was turned out 11 pieces of creative. And if you fast forward that to 2019, I think the last set of data you had, it was 311 pieces of
Wow.
creative. Exactly. So I think of it like TV channels. I grew up in the UK, and there was 4 TV channels, and everything was good,
Right.
right? Because there was a lot of money in those channels, and now there's 4,000 channels, and unsurprisingly, with the butter spread so thin across the toast, every bite is pretty bland. And so in terms of the way the advertising industry is going, business wise, the agency groups are busy sort of tearing themselves to pieces, and they don't know where to go.
Right.
It's Yeah, that's clear. So that's business. In terms of the creativity that we see, I have a feeling that we're going to see influencer marketing is continuing to balloon, and
Mm.
um, love it or hate it, it's a thing. And in fact, to the point where influencer style creative has started to leach into TV in the way that people talk and present information, a bit more snappy, things like that. So I have a feeling that not just influencer, but creator style content, which is inherently social, inherently um, faster paced, designed for vertical and all that jazz, will become more of the core of what a campaign is about, as opposed to one big hero TV.
Right. And, well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. Thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. The democratization of creativity that's happened now with the advent of just like at lightning speed of the access, as you're saying, of social media and everything, is that I know right now we have, before 20 years ago, if you wanted to publish a book, you had to find a publisher, you had to find an agent to do that.
Yeah.
Now, anybody can go on Amazon and make a book and get it published and put it on Amazon. And it's kind of diluted it's diluted the idea of what it means to write a good book, because now it's so hard to stand out. And it's almost, as you're talking about it, like it, people go to school to learn advertising. People actually like get degrees in advertising. People, this is not something you can pick up and just do, but because so many people see it's so easy to pick up a phone and do a TikTok for you and do something like that. Do you feel as though, as somebody in you know in the advertising creative world, that there seems to be a watered down process of understanding what it means to put out um, a
About put out
creative?
great content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Again, really good question. Um, yes and no. So people are still. I've got nothing but respect for the craft of creatives in agencies who are given the job of quite often adverse circumstances. You might have a difficult client or whatever, and who can
Right.
bring a campaign together. And I feel that generally they have respect for what they're doing, and an appreciation of craft and a desire to do good work. There is, of course, with this, as you said, where you've got loads and loads of creative being made, perhaps a slightly more slapdash affair. But when we deal with loads of influencer agencies now because it's just so prevalent, and
Mm.
budgets have reached a certain level where the eye of Sauron procurement is now looking at it going, how much money are you spending on this? Does it work? What is it? Some kids just talking. And so quite rightly, that's sort of being studied now. And with a lot of the more grown up influencer agencies that we deal with, yeah, they have their processes in place. And I think their interaction between them and the influencers that they work with, they do the best that they can to try and ensure that marketing goals are sort of KPIs are being hit, and there
Right.
is a degree of professionalism. There'll be edits and stuff and a process as to how that happens. So I can see that there is definitely an erosion in quality and care and love, but it's not like it's gone to Helena a hay cart. It's
Right.
yeah. I think people understand, and in fact, clients demand that stuff needs to have a degree of care put into it.
Right.
One last caveat: my prediction is that generative AI, as we were saying earlier, is going to flood the internet with rubbish in about a year. And I can see it coming now. There's going to be some big furore. It'll be like, why does my feed look nonsense, full of like pictures of Jesus made of loaves of bread or some nonsense? And yeah, I think there's going to be a wave of that, which will persist for a while until the pendulum will swing back, and we have a bit more of an appreciation of craft again after that, hopefully.
And so I want to talk also now about your position as the chief growth officer for DAIVID. Is uh, how, in a leadership position, not to put on your leadership hat, how do you sit down in some of these meetings where you have to balance? How do you balance the creativity process of trying something new, but then looking at like your data to show that this has worked before? And how do you have those conversations to say how to have those, either like the safe way of doing something, or let's try this, I think this is going to work? How do you have those conversations?
Well, I mean, I wish I had more power to be able to actually get um, some of our clients to advertise in a different way, but that's not how we're perceived or used. We're
Right.
there much more from an insight, well, strategy at the start of the process, insight reporting
Right.
to ensure that there is a growth in quality over time. That's the idea. You do make a good point though, in terms of creative versus data. Um, I mean, again, I could talk for ages about this, but I'll tell it anecdotally that we weren't dealing with that many creative agencies. Unbelievably, the
Mm.
creative effectiveness of advertising was actually being dealt with by predominantly media agencies. Clients themselves, yes, they were doing it. If they had big enough teams, smart enough teams who managed to get through COVID and all that stuff. So it's all the big brands that you would imagine, the FMCGs and top 100 spenders. But yeah, media agencies have been looking at this from very much a data point of view. And I felt that wasn't right. So I'm like, right, I'm going to go and talk to a bunch of senior creative people at agencies. And I know a bunch anyway from my previous life. And my hypothesis was that 25% of them would care. And they would be like, I want data to underpin my creative decision making. As I was saying at the top, I don't want my head in the sand. I want to be cognizant of what's going on. I want to be able to use AI and data to help tell the story that I want. And I've been on a mission, and I've spoken to loads of people. I'm very pleasantly surprised by the number of creatives that I speak to. Most, I would say, are fully engaged with being able to use data to prove aspects of creativity. So they're actually quite open to it. As though we have to caveat hard when we talk to people. Yeah, it's like, we're not telling you what to do. And the analogy I often say is, I'm giving you a blank canvas to paint on. So instead of you having to decide, you can paint anywhere, I'm giving you a canvas and you can create your artwork within the parameters of what we know to be effective. And that type of positioning seems to work quite well.
So say, for instance, what advice would you give young professionals who are looking to break into the digital media and advertising?
Clue up on AI hard. I mean, that's the most important thing that you can do. And secondly, as I'd said, the big agency groups are, without speaking in hyperbole or sort of excitable terms, their business models are eroded badly all over the place. And speaking very frankly, there's less money and less fun than there used to be when I was 25 or whatever. It was great. Before we started talking, we were talking about those pubs in Soho. Yeah, that was what we did. It was great. And that's just not there because of some of the economics that we've spoken about. So it would be, there is lots of sort of pockets of smaller digital creativity which serves advertising. Could be in influencer agencies and social agencies, sort of creator economy style startups. Yeah, small independent shops who are genuinely doing something different. In the UK, there's one called Uncommon, launched in the US a little while ago and did a Quaker Oats ad, I think was their first one. And some people think they're a bit of a cliche, but their work is bold, it's different. And so yeah, find shops like that.
Do you think, when it comes to generative AI, did COVID speed up the process of us using AI, or did it slow it down? Did things stall out? I guess how do these two evolutions kind of coincide with each other? Did one help the other?
I don't think it did, but because a lot of the output of generative AI and the way in which it's created is inherently remote. I don't think the pandemic actually maybe had that much of an effect on it. I think it's moving at the speed it can. What I think the propellant behind it was the explosion, I think, of Chat GPT. And when that happened and all of a sudden everyone was talking about it, that was when all these other things became much more, were brought into the light. And that's when people were talking about, okay, well, how can we then now apply this to advertising? But there's been, AI has been applied to advertising for quite a while now. And I don't know if you remember, there's been some absolute howlers, some terrible stuff. There was the Coca-Cola, I think, Twitter feed that was responding to people via AI and ended up quoting Mein Kampf for people. Yeah. So, and there's been all sorts of things which just look odd, and the uncanny valley when you have a response to things, it's not right. And there's been all sorts of, so it's been around for a while. So no, I don't think they're particularly related to the pandemic and generative AI.
I was curious about that. Yeah. What's next for DAIVID? Or is there any new tools or innovations that you guys are particularly excited about?
Well, there's always something new here. We actually have a product launch in officially about 14 days, which is I'm literally looking at the date, thinking, God, I need to get to work on that. But yeah, the self-serve product is, frankly, it's been operational for months, but we've been really busy iterating in the background, and that's now fully productized, ready to go. So put simply, we can look at thousands and thousands of ads and instantaneously predict, will people pay attention, how will they feel, and what made them feel that way, and that's all via API. So yeah, so some of our clients, I won't name names for sensitivity reasons, but they'll be able to put all of their advertising through and then have this very large data set to be able to say, okay, we know that all of the stuff we're doing on TikTok, some of this set of things elicit these emotions. That works really well for our sales process here, and that sort of thing. So that's the big thing that's coming up. DAIVID self-serve product launch. Yeah, we also global expansion. I mean, I'm not even joking. We are because as the advertising can move very quickly in adoption sometimes and quite slowly in others. And I think there's been a kind of a peculiar lack of desire to assess creative. And so, but that's accelerated over the last 2 years because, there's economic downturn, and, when the spreadsheet says we need to save money, then you'll go and find ways of saving money. So creative effectiveness has ballooned. But during that period, as we've been growing as a business, it's incumbent upon us to go where the money is and go where the people who are doing this stuff. And so that's why, even though we're a small but mighty 10 people, a third of our business is out of Singapore, about a third here in Europe, and then a third over with you in the States. So, yeah, and I do far too many calls early in the morning and it's 6 or 7 at night. So I don't want to be doing that anymore. So yeah, we'll be putting offices in those places to ensure that we can properly service our clients there.
Well,
Yeah.
Barney, this has been a great conversation. I'm so glad we're able to sit down and talk about this. It's timely, and as I say, we've gotten some great insights from you. I appreciate it.
It's fantastic. I mean, again, it's just lovely chatting to another Barney. But yeah, I genuinely enjoy what I do. I'm very lucky. It's a feature of the way of which myself and Ian, who's the CEO, we've put this business together, is to make sure that we like what we do. We bring our whole selves to work. We're pretty passionate about it. So yeah, it's genuinely no chore to talk about it.
I just told him that. I mean, I've been on my podcast. It's so weird. So our house isn't that big, but I don't know. So my wife, instead of like coming in and asking me a question, she'll call me, and I'm literally like, I'm like, I don't know, like 100 steps away. But it's the convenience of all. It reminds me of like, ringing for the butler or something like it's
Yeah.
like,
The older I get, the less likely I am to shout down the stairs or go down the stairs. So I can buy into that phoning idea.
yeah.
I'm down with that. I might do that more.
I know. It's just call me up. But all right, Barney, let me get and I see that's your logo behind you too, the flamingo.
Yeah. Well, we